My name's Jason Schuster. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I'm the author of all the writings that these videos are based on. Each episode reimagines my work through the lens of artificial intelligence, blending human insight with digital interpretation.
All right, let's talk about a really fascinating molecule called GHK Copper. Now, this isn't some strange synthetic cooked up in a lab. Nope. This is a peptide that's naturally found inside our own bodies. And believe me, it's getting a ton of attention for what it can potentially do. So why all the buzz? Well, just take a look at this chart. It pretty much says it all. A key study looked at GHK levels in our blood, and what they found was, wow. When you're about 25 years old, you're sitting at about 200 nanograms per milliliter. But fast forward to age 60, and that number just plummets to 80. That is a massive, massive drop, and it's the #1 reason scientists are so interested in figuring out what happens when we can bring those levels back up. So, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to dig into that decline. Then, we'll get clear on what GHK copper actually is. After that, we'll explore its incredible role as a master gene regulator, weigh the benefits against the safety data, and finally, we'll zoom out for the big picture. Okay, so let's start with that decline we just saw. You know, this isn't just some random biological factoid. It's the real why behind all the research. When you have a powerful, healing substance in your body that just tanks as you get older, the obvious question becomes, what are we losing? And more importantly, what could happen if we got it back? And that brings us right to our next question, which is, what in the world is this molecule we're talking about? At its heart, GHK copper, or GHKCU, is basically two things stuck together. First, you have GHK. That's a tripeptide, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a tiny little protein made of 3 amino acids: glycine, histidine, and lysine. Now, this little peptide has a really, really strong magnetic attraction to the mineral copper. So it grabs onto it, and boom, you've got the complete GHK copper molecule. And because it's tied into so many of our body's core processes, you see it being studied for just about everything. A lot of people already use it in skincare products for skin regeneration, but the research goes so much deeper, from hair loss and wound healing, all the way to repairing nervous tissue and even improving bone and lung health. But wait, how can one little molecule do so many different things? This is where it gets really cool. It seems its superpower is its ability to influence our body at a deep cellular level. It acts like a kind of master gene regulator. And to give you an idea of just how powerful that influence is, get this. In one study, they looked at the specific genes linked to the spread of colon cancer. What they found was that GHK treatment actually reversed the expression of 70% of those genes. It's like it walked in and told the bad genes to shut up and the good genes to get back to work. So how does that even work? Well, the key thing to understand is that GHK doesn't rewrite your DNA code or anything like that. Instead, it changes the environment around your DNA. That new environment then influences which of your genes get switched on or off. And since your genes are the blueprints for all the proteins in your body, changing which genes are on, well, it changes what your body builds, and that leads to totally different health outcomes. You know, here's a pretty simple way to think about it. If your genes aren't being expressed the right way, it's kind of like your body's construction crew is working with the wrong set of blueprints. Introducing GHK is like handing them a fresh, correct set of plans and all the essential building materials they were missing. It just allows the body to get back to functioning the way it's supposed to. Okay, so we've got a handle on what it is and how it works. So now let's get to the good stuff, the actual benefits, the safety profile, and some of the scientific details that are worth talking about. The list of studied benefits is, well, it's pretty long. It's been shown to speed up how fast wounds heal. It helps calm down inflammation and oxidative stress. It even helps rebuild tissue, supports collagen, and helps bones heal. And in one study, it boosted a key beneficial protein called decorin by an incredible 302%. Now, there is one interesting scientific debate worth mentioning. GHK increases something called VEGF, which helps build new blood vessels. So the theory was, couldn't that fuel cancer growth? But what's fascinating is that the actual data shows the opposite. Studies actually suggest GHK helps fight certain cancers. You know, it's kind of like intense exercise. That also increases VEGF, and we all know how good that is for us. It just goes to show you that biology is way more complex than just one single pathway. So then, what about safety? Is this stuff risky? Well, researchers did the math. They took the lethal dose from mouse studies and scaled it up for a 150-pound human. The number they got was 22,400 milligrams. And to put that number in perspective, that is thousands of times higher than a normal therapeutic dose. What that tells us is that GHK has a very, very wide safety margin. So really, the main takeaway here is that GHK is considered to have a really strong safety profile. In fact, many of us have probably been using it for years without even knowing it because it's a pretty common ingredient in all sorts of popular skincare products. All right, let's zoom out for a second and bring this all home. Let's recap the most important takeaways here. So in a nutshell, GHK Copper is a natural peptide that we all have, but its levels drop off a cliff as we age. Its real magic is in its ability to tweak our gene expression. It tells cancer-promoting genes to quiet down while telling our healing genes to ramp up. It essentially pushes our body back towards a state of balance and healing. And the best part, it does all this with a really high safety profile. And that kind of leaves us with one final, pretty mind-blowing thought. GHK is something our own bodies make. If a single molecule that we produce can be this powerful, if it can regulate our own genes to promote healing, it just makes you wonder, what other incredible secrets are still waiting to be discovered right inside of us?